Namaste, listeners. Come heal yourself. Hope you are having a blissful day. We are back once again, and today this discussion will change your definition of hope. I'm sure all of us are always struggling with finding hope in dire times. And we welcome Liz Cunningham today, who wrote Ocean Country, which is one woman's voyage from peril to hope. In her quest to save the seas, Liz shows us how people around the world are practicing hope in action. Yes, hope in action. And why it's time for all of us to join them. So she has been an author, and she is the author of Talking Politics, Choosing the President in the Television Age, which features frank and probing oral history interviews with top television journalists such as Tom Brokaw, Larry King, and Robin McNeil. And she has written for Earth Island Journal. So let's welcome Liz. And we are very, very honored to have you today.
It's good to be with you, Monica.
How are you this morning?
I'm fine.
Great. Awesome. So Liz, any introduction is less for you. I read your book and it comes straight from the soul, from your heart. And we are so grateful that you're here to talk about your upcoming book and how this process changed your life and how this book came along. So tell us how you came to write Ocean Country, and also, so Liz, please tell us.
Yes, Monica, I hear a little bit of an echo on the line, so I'm not sure when I should be speaking.
There are some technical issues and I'm trying to get in touch with them. Sorry about that. It's
no worries. So what I'll
strange.
do is I'll just speak over the echo and we won't worry about it. How about that?
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
No problem. Great. So once more, you wanted me to say a little bit of how did I come to write the book?
Yes, and about yourself, listeners would definitely like to know more about you and definitely how this wonderful book came along.
Sure. Well, writing this book was the most incredible adventure of my life. And I had one book in mind when I started to write it, but about a third of the way through, it became an entirely different book. So the beginning of that story was that I was in this accident. It was a kayak accident, and I had a near-death experience. A rogue wave hit me while I was in the ocean in a kayak, and I had a concussion, and then I was partially paralyzed during the accident, and then regained feeling. But I had a very, very close brush with death. And that really turned my life upside down. And at the time, I was covering presidential politics. And so over the course of a number of years, I realized I'd always loved the ocean, to learn more about the ocean. And I also wanted to understand my love of the ocean because I was in this strange situation that this body of water that I'd so loved for many years, now it almost killed me. So I started to write about the ocean. I published some articles, and I said to myself, I want to write a book. So I began writing a book that would be about ocean conservation. But about a third of the way through my research, I was really stunned by the level of devastation that was occurring. And I felt like I'm not sure I even want to go ahead with this. I was so stunned by the enormity of it. So at that point, I really felt I'm not sure if I have hope for this world. That began what I felt was a completely different book, where I was not only writing about ocean conservation, but I was also searching for hope.
So, Liz, tell us how your near-death experience set you on this journey.
It did it by haunting me. It didn't give me any instructions. There was no instruction manual for this. I would love it if there was a little instruction manual after a near-death experience, steps for integrating this into your life. Because what it really did was it turned my life upside down.
Mm-hmm.
The life that I was leading as a professional no longer made sense to me. And I was haunted by an experience that I had during the accident. And it took a long, long time for me to bring those together. And I would say that the driver of it was that I had this haunting experience. I could make no sense of it. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is it wouldn't stop haunting me. I mean, it was almost like it was chasing me. So wow. I had to really make a quest out of understanding what that feeling was. Mm-hmm. And the process of that was both my internal seeking, but it also came in the form of a gift from other people, from how they were living their lives. So would you like me to keep going? I know I hear an echo here, but is that all right?
Yeah, it looks like it's not on the radio.
Okay. The poor people on the radio get to hear us.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's try this. Let me try to connect again. Let's end the call and let me try to connect again.
Very well. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Your conscious connection to a more mindful world. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
September 23rd, September 23rd, September 23rd. Mark that down on your calendar. Put it in your phone. Whatever you do, circle that date. 9 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio. Yes, it is the return of the Joe Show. We will come back live with Season 9. Wow, 9 seasons. I can only think of 4. Winter, spring, summer, fall. Salt, pepper, oregano, and thyme. No. Anyways, we don't have that much time. We're going to be back live September 23rd. Don't forget. 9 p.m. Eastern, here on OMTimes Radio.
Simone Milasas would like you to know that business can be fun, which is why she wrote the book, Joy of Business. What if you could have the joy of business rather than the stress and struggle? Most of the time, the only thing stopping you from a thriving business is you. In the Joy of Business book, Simone gives you access consciousness tools and pragmatic ways to get out of your own way and to create the business, life, and living you know is possible and beyond what this reality says is achievable. Business is joy. It's creation. It's generative. It can be the adventure of living. You can purchase your copy of the book through Amazon or Joy of Business website, www.accessjoyofbusiness.com. Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
If you've ever said, I do want it all. I do want happiness. I do want love. And I do desire the happily ever after fairy tale life, then this show is for you. Join me, Dana Nicole Brandon, for my internationally acclaimed show, Bridal Talk Radio, every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, where I'll bring you the top experts in the fields of communication, money, relationships, finance, pleasure, play, travel, sexuality, parenting, real estate, adventure, comfort, care, passion, and love.
Bringing you the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio, your conscious lifestyle on steroids.
And we are back, and we are really, really sorry about the technical difficulties, but hope you're able to hear us clearly now. Welcome back, Liz, and I really apologize for the difficulties we faced. Um, so we were talking about your journey, and I know it was a bit unclear. So I would again, ask you to share about how you came to write this awesome book. And like I said, this discussion will change your perception of hope and what hope is all about. Let's hear from Liz. Welcome back,
Okay.
Liz.
Well, you probably always have a better shot at telling the story a second time. But basically, I was someone who'd always loved the ocean, and I was in a whitewater kayak in the ocean here off the California coast, and I was hit by a rogue wave. And in that accident, I was temporarily paralyzed, and I had a near-death experience where basically I struggled underwater. I wasn't able to use my arms, and so I thought, I'm dying. Went away into a kind of dream world.
Wow.
And in that place, I really became resigned. I thought, wow, I'm dying. And in that place, actually, I heard a voice, and the voice said, do you want to live? And I said, yes. And suddenly I had feeling in my arms, and my eyes opened, and I was able to push myself out of the kayak and to the surface. In the aftermath of that accident, that experience haunted me, and everything about it haunted me. I wanted to know more about the ocean. I wanted to understand, why did I love the ocean so much? Now this ocean that I love so much had almost killed me.
Yeah.
And I was haunted by that experience that I had. I didn't have a way of thinking about it, or I didn't have a place for it in my life. So that was a long process of integration.
So what was that? So, I mean, you had always loved ocean, like you just grew up with it.
No, actually, I didn't fall in love with it until I was a teenager. The first time I really had significant contact was an outward bound expedition that I did in the Gulf of Florida when I was 17 years old. And ever since that, I adored the ocean.
Wow. Okay. But I mean, you were a very, very different person before this incident happened, before your near-death experience.
Yes, because I think my love of the ocean was like a hobby. It was part of my private life. And then I had my professional life where I wrote about presidential politics.
Yeah.
Worked as a freelance editor in publishing.
Yeah.
So these two parts of my life were very separate.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I guess most of us live that way, right? It's like our hobbies are so much different than our professions, and we just indulge, or we just give those things time when, we are free. Like, we don't give them much importance in our life, but it's really surprising for so many of us. This realization all of a sudden comes that this is our passion. This is something that we were born to do.
Yes.
Is it something how you felt, like the deep connection?
Yes, and I think so many people ask me, when I speak about the ocean and what's happening to the environment, so many people ask, what can I do? What can I do? And there are laundry lists of steps you can do, and they're all important. Recycling, lowering your carbon footprint, going to a beach cleanup. But I think one of the big pieces that sometimes is missing in those lists is if you can find something, even for an hour or two a week, that you love to do, that makes the world a better place, that's the sweet spot to find. If you find something either you love to do or something you love that you want to do something for, whether it's a creature or a person, a place, because I think that's where the magic juice kicks into gear.
Yes. That's when that giving 100% or living 100% starts.
I think at that moment, all kinds of energies will fill you. I mean, this morning the alarm rang and I'm like, oh. I was like, go over your notes. And I'm like, I'm here. Somehow the energy's there because I have
Yes.
such a love for this.
We can sense in your voice, and your book is so beautiful. I cannot stress so much. Like, I started it, and it was like you can deeply connect. It's not about so much just about the subject, like your passion, but it's like connecting with that passion of our own, that part of our own that is so alive, and that's what we are here to express. It just comes out so alive, so strong in your book.
Well, I'm really glad to hear you respond that way, because when I wrote the introduction, it felt very tricky because what this book is about is the ocean, but I felt like ultimately it's about a pathway deeper into life.
Right.
And my pathway was through the ocean. But
Yes.
it could come through forests, it could come through working on world hunger issues, it could come through being a teacher or a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
The pathway I was drawn through was my passion for the ocean, but I do feel that many of the insights in the book, there are parallels in very different fields or areas of interest.
Yes. I mean, of course, we have a need of every kind of profession here, or, everything. It's not like, we all are here to do just one thing. And to me, everything is spiritual. Everything that you do from your heart. I mean, whatever you do, if you do it from your heart, it becomes spiritual.
Yeah, and I think that, one of the things that haunted me about the kayak accident, it wasn't really clear until I was out in the field and doing interviews with people. And then I saw different people in different situations, and I was reaching for a way to understand why what they were doing was so important. And that eventually took me back to the kayak accident.
Mm.
One of the examples is a French chef, Francois Pasteur, who has a restaurant in Paris.
Yeah.
He was explaining to me, we were talking about sustainable seafood, how he used to make this incredible bluefin burger. And everybody who came to his restaurant, they loved that bluefin burger.
Yeah.
But he watched a documentary about bluefin, and he thought, wow, they're going to become extinct.
Mm.
And he thought, how can I serve this bluefin burger? And he thought about it, and he thought, wow, I buy local foods. There's this poster in the restaurant that says, manger local, eat local.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I can't do it. I'm not going to serve it anymore.
Wow.
And that was in 2007. And he could have just said, it's just little old me. The guys across the street are going to serve the bluefin burger. What's the difference? But he felt like, no, I can't do this. And 5 years went by where the bluefin populations were still going down and down to like 1% and 2% of pre-industrial levels. I mean, they were teetering at the edge of extinction.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2012, suddenly the numbers start coming up. And I remember I asked Sergei Tudela from WWF, the World Wildlife Fund, what happened.
Yeah.
And he said, we didn't quit. And all those efforts,
So
the chefs, the petitions, the awareness campaigns, the adjustments to quotas, all of that, it added up.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things I started to see was that these kinds of efforts, there was a parallel between what was happening there and what happened to me in the kayak accident.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people could have looked at that situation with bluefin and said, don't bother with it. It's so thick with the economy. The mafia was in on it. Japanese companies were buying bluefin so they could sell them for higher prices. They would freeze them. And then it was Mitsubishi, actually. They were buying up bluefin because They thought, we'll freeze them, and then after they go extinct, we can sell them from our
Oh
ungodly
my
quantities of
God.
plenty. So this fishery was so enmeshed with our economy. It was the most hopeless fishery in the world. And I saw that a lot of people would probably have said, you know what, we've passed the point of no return here. Give it up.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me in the kayak accident, where I had no feeling in my arms. I was running out of air.
Mm-hmm.
I'd struggled. I'd bargained. I'd actually gone ahead and decided, I can't believe this, but I'm dying.
Uh-huh.
But somewhere in the middle of all those no's, no air, no feeling, there's this little yes note.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't be alive if not for that yes. And
Yes.
those people working on behalf of Bluefin, they weren't sure they would succeed.
Right.
Didn't quit, and they were listening to the yes notes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here, I mean, I'm also hearing like, so many times this question comes like, how can one person make a difference, right? Like, what am I going to do alone?
Got
I
it.
cannot make a difference. But here, like your friend that you're talking about, who was doing so well, but just made that conscious decision no matter what and stuck to it.
Exactly.
And then you, I'm sure, and we would like to hear from you, your ups and downs. And I'm sure, you went through a lot after your experience. What really, helps you going? What keeps you going? And, how did you feel about it? I'm sure there were like lot of thoughts and feelings that came up during that time.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Join Elliot Jollish, the business therapist, each Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Elliot Jollish Hour, as he interviews business experts on your behalf. And you're invited to email your business questions to questions@ecjgroup.com for answers, live, on air every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Elliot Jollish Hour. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Welcome to The Gathering Around My Kitchen Table on Equilarium FM, Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join my guests as we integrate spirituality into everyday reality with vibrant conversations, inspired interviews, and my latest channeled guidance to inspire and brighten your day. I'm Claire Johnson, and together we'll be raising vibrations across the nations.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
And we are back. Welcome back, Liz.
Hi there. How about repeating that question once more?
So I just wanted to know, and I'm sure our listeners are curious to know. After that experience, of course, there must have been so many different emotions and feelings. And were you clear or were you lost? How did it help you, come up with this to share?
You were saying after the experience of the kayak accident or the experience of doing the research for the book?
So tell us about both, how it all came together.
Great. Well, I'll tell you, the the kayak accident had a really catalytic effect on me.
Mm-hmm.
It made me feel like I'm not sure what my life is anymore. For instance, I'm on the radio with you now.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking.
Yeah.
I feel like I know who I am. I know what I need to do. I was on the radio 2 months after the kayak accident.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing commentary on presidential campaigns, and I write about it in the book.
Yeah.
I was on the radio, and I remember I was doing a double interview. Someone else was talking, and I thought, I don't know what this is. I don't know what my life is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, is actually a very dramatic contrast, because now I feel like, hello, it's me. I have something to say. And the other person, there was not this deep passion. I love politics. There are political commentators I admire enormously.
Right.
But it wasn't my thing anymore. But I didn't know what my thing was. So the kayak accident had a catalytic effect on me in the sense that it began a search. But in the end, what really changed who I am was the 2 years of research that I did for this book, intensively traveling the globe. That changed who I am.
So you decided to drop everything and you decided to travel and discover yourself?
Well, it wasn't such a dramatic transition. It really was more of a mull and slogging along with some very beautiful events that happened. I basically decided not to write another book about presidential politics. I worked as a freelance editor. I had some really difficult problems with my health, both chronic illness and also with my back, because I had multiple hairline fractures in my spine.
After the accident?
Yes. So I was mulling along. And one of the things I did decide to do was to train as a dive master so that I could get back in the water, because quite honestly, one toe in the water just terrified me.
Yeah, that was so inspiring, because we all freeze after such scary, experiences. I mean, this was a very, very strong one. So this is like very inspiring, like in spite of those fears. How did you push yourself?
It wasn't a push, it was a longing. And then it was really more a nervous fidgeting to get back in the And, it was just bit by bit by bit. There were no violins playing in the background. You just get started. And, it really became a process of bit by bit getting into the water. And the idea of training was that I would develop more skill with my equipment and more skill in the water. So I think one of the things is that I wasn't so brave. I was more persistent. And one of the big things that this book taught me is that it's okay to be afraid. Something that I say often is that, you don't have to wrestle your fear to the ground. It's more like the Kentucky Derby. You just have to be a little more courageous than you are fearful. You can win by a nose. As long as the courage is a little more than your fear, you're going to get there.
That's we are very, very grateful that you are sharing that, because that's huge.
I mean, I'm a very nervous person. A little more courage. I mean, God, the things I get wound up about, it's hilarious. And people say, oh, you're so brave. And I think, all right, I'm not sure. But that's really important, because people think of you as being kind of this really, courageous person that doesn't get nervous. And that's just not at all true.
So tell us about it. I mean, we all struggle with this, Liz, and definitely need help. It's like, it's so beautiful that you are sharing your true self, and we see you as a very strong and brave person. I mean, what you have done is commendable. So you are saying on a day-to-day basis or in your life, you also deal with insecurities and fears.
Constantly, yes. I mean, and then, also it's good to be humorous about it. I mean, I think the piece that I really like about this project is that it's important to be transparent. I think that a lot of the people that I met in the book and a lot of the stories that I write about, those taught me how to have more courage and also just see that the person I am, who is nervous and who is fearful and who doesn't always feel like they're up for the task, they taught me that you can just keep going, left foot, right foot. And I think that's the people I write about. It's that thing. That was one of the main things that I learned from them.
Wow.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry, please go ahead. You were saying something.
You go. I'll let you go.
I was just saying, like, this was your journey. I mean, of course, you are still on your journey. We all are. But how did you realize, we all keep waiting for things and we hope things will come to us. And, what hit me really deep was when in your book I read, hope in action, doing things as hope. That's very deep. And that's true. It's like, it's not about just waiting for things.
Exactly. And the epigraph of the book is this wonderful quote by David Orr, which is, hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up.
Yes.
And I just think that's so important. And I think that one of the big things that I learned over and over again through the people I met and the things I saw is that we try to calculate whether there's hope or not for our future, because we're all living with this kind of, it's like a lead shield that's draped on us. You know those shields they drape on you when you go to the dentist?
Yes.
Yeah. It's this sense that, things are going to hell with our environment or in terms of warfare. And we think about, God, we look at children today and we go, what world are they going to live in? It's frightening. So we all kind of have that weight with us. And what I learned was something that I didn't know, and I don't think we have in our kind of worldview very clearly that I think we need. And that is that there are millions of people and organizations around the world working on behalf of our environmental future and on behalf of social justice.
Right.
And these people are doing incredible work, but they're also getting a lot done. And they showed me what hope was. And these kinds of actions, I mean, one of them, for instance, I mentioned before was the Bluefin turnaround, where you had people all over the world not quitting. And they ended up halting this march to extinction. And they did something that most people would have said, oh, you'll never get that done. That'll never happen. This is a doomed fishery. But there are also individual stories. And one of my favorites and one of the most inspiring people is a woman named Liz Trejo, who I met in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And she took care of some baby sea turtles. And the story of that is Amdeep Sanghera from the Marine Conservation Society. He had been working with turtle fishers, and he discovered 7 baby sea turtles that were stranded in a nest. So he had to go back to Britain. And he's like, he had brought these sea turtles home. They're like the size of a chocolate chip cookie. And he had them in a little plate, little platter, and he was feeding them little bits of conch.
Yeah.
And so he went to a barbecue and he's like, God, what do I do with these turtles now? So Iglesias was at the barbecue, and she always said, 5 minutes at a barbecue changed my life. So he said to her, he said, well, will you take care of them? And she has 2 toddlers at home. She's married. She works 2 jobs. She's like, okay. And so he brings her the turtles, and he being a conservationist and knowing a lot about turtle physiology and survival rates, he said to Elise, he said, here you go. But he said, don't name them because some of them or all of them may not survive. You don't need me to know what she did when she got home. She named them, and they all had names. So she took care of those turtles 2.5 years and then released them into the wild.
Wow.
And she's kids, 2 jobs. 1 month they had a bacterial infection. She took them to the vet. Taking care of that meant going by their little pool, drying each one off with a towel and applying betadine 3 times a day for a month.
Wow.
So ask, is there hope for these babies or not? And what tipped the needle in the hope direction? And the other thing about these turtles was that I think for Elise, it was one of the most amazing experiences in her life. And the other thing is that all these school kids got involved. They helped transfer the turtles to a bigger tank when they got to a small one. And these kids around the islands started to learn to pick up plastic because they learned that the turtles confuse them for jellyfish. And they kill them if they eat plastic. So turtles became little conservation superstars in the Turks and Caicos Islands.
Wow.
So to me, Elise was teaching me about hope.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just waiting and watching if they will survive. Her love, compassion, and how she served them actually saved them.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what hope is all about. This is so profound and so simple. I mean,
the future of internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Dr. Kevin here, and I want to invite you every Thursday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, to join me on the Dr. Kevin Show, where we have a diversity of guests who help you step outside the box, behind the curtain, and see what a load of crap is going on in the world today, so you have more information with which to make better decisions. We'll see you there. Namaste.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hi, this is Angela Levesque, host of Entanglement Radio. Join me Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern for inspiring conversations with visionaries in spiritual science and conscious healing. Entanglement Radio, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. Transcendent talk for the conscious mind.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
And we are back. And we were talking about hope. And Liz has so beautifully described the experience and her friend's story. And that's exactly what hope is. Thank you very much, Liz. So I want to share with all of my listeners, all of our listeners, friends, that 21% of the royalties from this book will be given to the New England Aquarium's Marine Conservation Action Fund that aims to protect and promote ocean biodiversity. So, Liz, I know, gratitude just keeps coming up. We can see how grateful you are and how sharing you are, how compassionate you are. So tell us about this, like how you decided um, to, to share.
Well, I felt compelled. And I think one of the big things that compelled me was that I started to see that this experience of hope is very relevant to the big picture that we're dealing with now. And I think ultimately that drove me to write the book that Ocean Country is. And that is the really big picture of our environmental future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, right now, happily, we're seeing a lot of attention coming to climate change and mass extinction.
Right.
And I think, I would ask you, do you sometimes hear people just say, it's going to hell and there's no stopping it?
Yes. Yes.
You hear that. And forgive me, since I'm always sometimes the person that asks the questions, but do you sometimes think, I don't know, are we going to just use up all our resources and have this, horrendous kind of collapse that some people are envisioning?
Mm-hmm. But I feel we can definitely, of course, that we can see what's happening here, definitely with our resources and, how the weather is changing, the global warming. But I still feel, if all of us come together and take steps towards it, don't we know what our responsibility is and how we can help stop that?
Exactly. And that's why I felt compelled to write this book, because I think that what we're seeing now is there's certain types of truth that are so glaring that they really kind of block out the other truths. And we have the truth of the devastation of what's happening to us. But there's also the truth of how much can be done.
Right.
And I really felt that there was a huge connection between what happened to me in the kayak accident and the stories of people who turned things around in the conservation field that I write about, and what we have going on with our environmental future, where we see these crises and we often think maybe we've passed the point of no return.
Right.
And the jury is out on climate change. But through the course of my research, I saw more and more how it's possible to slip into a state of resignation, even when the fact is you can turn things around. And so that was what I saw in the work of the people that I document. And these people, they're seeking out the yes notes and they're putting them into the action. And those actions, those are adding up to significant change. And so the book itself is really a call to action for each of us to find a way to be a little bit more engaged and not torture ourselves with this thought of, oh, what will it matter, my one little action. We start seeing it's all those actions adding up, and they will add up. And that turnarounds like this in the past happened because many, many, many people got engaged. And so it's really a sense of just turning that attitude around. And you can say, okay, what difference will it make if I sign this petition? What difference will it make if I change my lifestyle? What difference will it make if I write my elected officials? And instead say, I want to enable myself to be part of this change. And I'm not going to worry about whether it happens or not. I'm just do my best.
And this book actually shares how it has made a difference, sharing the true stories of, the activists and peoples and organizations that are trying to make this change one step at a time, and how it has brought those changes. And you have shared those beautifully in this book. That is very encouraging and inspiring. And I guess if we read this book, we all read this book, we'll know what our calling is and how we can help.
And I think one of the big pieces that I discovered and I wrote about is when you get out of neutral and get into gear, because I feel like hope is really about getting out of neutral. That's where the pivot point is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're in neutral. Okay, find another gear and let's get going. When you do that, something magical happens. There's more energy. And there are many names for that. It may be something spiritual. You may think of it as your life force. But there's something beautiful that kicks in. And that's the passion. That's the passion for rescue.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was some story about a man. There was a child on a railroad track in Britain, and the train was coming. So the man jumped on the kid, lay flat while the train ran over them. Well, what happens there? That's the passion for rescue. And I think it's important to see that whether it's a petition or just deciding you want to talk at a dinner table about climate change, you want to break silence and say, hey, this is an emergency. That's the passion for rescue.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, have you been through those moments when you feel it, you want to do something about it, but something stops you, that inner resistance that comes? How do you overcome it?
Oh, do you mean now, like in my daily life?
Mm-hmm.
I think now I'm able to name it. That is really important. I think, for instance, in my life, I can say, okay, there's that little old me can't make a difference thought.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I think is really important is that it is in the interests of some of the wealthiest people in the world and some of the largest corporations in the world to have us feel powerless and think that thought as well. Mm-hmm. And I realize that it is a thought that is not helpful. And I think I'm starting to see that. I'm starting to be able to break away from it. So, you know what? Let's pretend I'm a fossil fuel company and I want to keep exploring the rest of the world and just digging up more oil and burning it. You know what? Well, what about the people who don't want me to do that? I want them to feel powerless and helpless and think they can't make a difference. Because if they start feeling powerful,
Yeah.
So I realize there's a political element to that sense of powerlessness as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not the truth. And
it does not.
In the end, it is true that if you take actions, they may lead to broad change. They don't always, but they may.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, going back to the book, what was the single most transcendent moment for you during the course of your research and travels?
Well, there was no one absolute one, but I recall going up a river in West Papua in a kayak, and I ended up in an illegal lumbering site.
Oh.
You could see all this mud pouring out the river and into the ocean. It was choking the mangroves. It was choking the coral. There were no fish. And I ended up going around a bend and running into a military man with a gun and talking my way out of an interaction with him. And then I left. I turned back around. And I remember feeling like this river was like a metaphor for the whole world. We were extracting so much lumber, metals, fish that was chilling off this river. The river was really a metaphor for the ocean. And I remember feeling so sad. And a couple days later, I was diving in the Dampier Strait of West Papua, and I still carried that sense of helplessness and sadness. And I ended up being swept off a reef and out in the open ocean. There are very strong currents in Dampier Strait. It was like 6 or 7 knot current. I was separated from the group, and I had to do a safety stop. It's a diving technicality, but I had to do a safety stop for 6 minutes at 15 feet. And there I was just being swept away in the currents. And I remember just at that moment, I think I just sort of melted down. I thought, big companies, greed, all of this, you're no match for this. And I remember just thinking, how could I have been so naive? And I felt very naive, alone and helpless. So I finished the stop, and then I looked up, and suddenly there were 3 huge oceanic mantas circling me. The wingspan of these were so big they could drape over a big car. And the bottom line was I swam with these for a while, and suddenly I saw the reef, and they had guided me back to the group of divers. And what that made me feel at the time, I couldn't articulate it, but now I look back and I realize when you feel like you've lost all hope, just keep connecting.
Wow.
Just look at what you can do to connect.
Yes. Exactly.
And I think at that moment, my decision was to connect with them, and it'll always be a mystery. All I know was they brought me back to the reef. I ducked behind a rock. I turned around, and all I could see was very distant flapping shapes.
Right. And we are so grateful to you, Liz, for sharing yourself, your story, your experiences. And this is a beautiful book that I would encourage everyone to read, because it will not only help you.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.